The United States has secured preliminary trade agreements with the European Union, Japan, and South Korea, while trade frameworks with key Southeast Asian nations are nearing completion. These countries face U.S. import tariffs ranging from 15% to 20%. In return, they must open their markets to American energy, automotive, and agricultural products, eliminate non-tariff barriers, and increase purchases of U.S. goods. Many are also required to invest in U.S.-based factories, establishing comprehensive supply chains. These agreements are expected to be formally signed and implemented within 3 months, signaling that the U.S. is using tariffs to enforce a new global trade order. Previously, global trade operated on a simple premise. The U.S. fueled worldwide demand by running the largest trade deficit, exporting dollars and accumulating massive fiscal deficits and federal debt. In 2024, the U.S. goods trade deficit reached $1.21 trillion, matching the combined trade surpluses of all other nations and regions. Global trade hinged on this U.S. deficit. For instance, the EU's 2024 trade surplus with the US was €198.2 billion, enabling significant purchases of affordable Chinese goods, resulting in a €304.5 billion trade deficit with China. Effectively, the US sustained global trade by continuously exporting capital and deficits. Now US federal debt stands at $36.7 trillion, with the government struggling to cover even the interest payments. This model of US-driven global purchasing power can no longer persist. The Trump administration has launched a global tariff campaign to establish a new trade order. This order is straightforward. The US demands fair trade, requiring all nations to dismantle unfair trade practices. Many countries impose value-added taxes and higher consumption taxes on imports while protecting domestic industries, such as automobiles and agriculture, through complex and restrictive regulations that block foreign, especially American products. The U.S., by contrast, has no value-added or import consumption taxes and minimal industry protections, leaving its market largely open and vulnerable. The Trump administration will no longer accept this imbalance. Countries that fail to swiftly eliminate value-added and import consumption taxes face tariffs of 15% to 20%. Those that maintain restrictive industry policies face tariffs up to 50%. This approach explains why the EU, Japan, and South Korea face 15% tariffs, while China faces 55%. The US's remaining major trade partners, Canada, Mexico, and India, have yet to finalize trade frameworks but are unlikely to resist for long. By August, these nations will likely agree to terms under this new order. Exploiting the US market is no longer feasible, a reality widely accepted across the US, even among Democrats. In this context, the third round of US-China trade talks in Sweden yielded little progress. The sole outcome was an agreement to maintain current tariff levels, 55% from the US on China, and 10% from China on the US for up to 3 months, with Trump retaining the authority to impose higher tariffs at his discretion. For example, Trump has repeatedly stated that nations must cease purchasing Russian oil, threatening 100% tariffs on those who continue. This policy would almost certainly target China, which, alongside India, accounts for 90% of Russia's oil exports. India purchases Russian oil primarily for resale, often without bringing it to its shores, shipping it directly to Europe. Ceasing this trade would merely reduce India's transshipment profits. For India's opportunistic leaders, compliance will follow once tariffs are imposed. China, however, genuinely depends on Russian oil. As the Trump administration strengthens its influence in the Middle East, China's regional presence has weakened, increasing its reliance on Russian oil. The Chinese government has repeatedly affirmed its unwavering support for Russia, leaving no room for compromise. Consequently, the US-China tariff conflict will intensify soon. Once the US finalizes trade agreements with the EU, Japan, Canada, and Mexico, likely by the third quarter, the new global trade order will take effect by the fourth quarter. At that point, the US will focus on confronting China, sparking a new round of trade disputes. China has no effective response. The US's global purchasing power, channeled through complex trade networks, ultimately concentrated in China. With the US halting this flow, China will face the heaviest consequences. Moreover, China cannot integrate into the new trade order, as it cannot meet the core demand of eliminating industry access restrictions and fully opening its markets. Sectors like finance, transportation, media, publishing, and internet services are tightly linked to the Chinese government's centralized control and will remain closed. Even state-controlled agricultural trade offers no room for negotiation. The issue of Russian oil purchases has become a critical political matter, viewed by Xi Jinping as essential for political stability, with no possibility of concessions. As a result, China will be excluded from the new global economic order, proclaiming victories while being carved up by the US, Europe, and Japan. The harsh reality of global politics is that if you're not at the negotiating table, you're on the menu. China is that menu item, and the time is nearing. By the fourth quarter, Japan, the US, and the EU will divide China's economic assets. The question now is how they will consume this feast. As the adage goes, when a whale falls, all life thrives. How should China's vast resources be divided to maximize their value? First, while China excels in basic manufacturing, it also possesses significant expertise in high-end sectors like electronics, fine chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and shipbuilding. These can be distributed among Japan, the US, and the EU to strengthen their manufacturing bases. Remaining basic industries, such as clothing and footwear, can be allocated to compliant allies like Vietnam, which has demonstrated strong alignment with the US. Second, as China's economy collapses, its currency will lose all value, rendering the yuan worthless. The Chinese government may tie food vouchers to the yuan to maintain some domestic purchasing power. However, in black markets, for scarce goods or bribes, only dollars, yen, and euros, specifically cash, will be accepted. This will provide a stable use case for the currencies of Japan, the US, and the EU, while strangling China's economy, preventing recovery. Third, China's vast engineer workforce can be selectively utilized. Some could receive temporary work visas to labor in factories and mines established by Japan, the US, and the EU at a fraction of standard wages, leveraging China's low human rights standards. During the risky startup phase of these facilities, Chinese engineers, highly skilled, compliant, and expendable, can handle dangerous tasks. If fatalities occur, compensation is minimal. Once the facilities are operational, these workers can be sent back to China. When needed again, they will return eagerly, accustomed to such treatment by the Chinese Communist Party. By consuming these three segments, Japan, the US, and the EU will prosper, securing economic stability for at least a generation. Meanwhile, in China, the Communist Party will maintain control over its core provinces, while other regions may descend into chaos. During this period, half of China's population could face starvation. This is the consequence China must bear, the price of its actions. After 3 generations of submission, the fourth will pay with the loss of half its people. Every action has a cost, and now is the time for China to pay. Thanks for watching and joining us on this journey to unveil China's many layers. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and hit that subscribe button to stay updated. See you in the next video.